Hello and welcome to Post Point, a podcast where we sort of just kind of go over the news in general that you might have been missing online. I'm Steven Gonzalez, Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Victor Filion, the videographer.
I'm Maddie Ashcraft, Managing Editor.
And I'm Ash Polk-Wheelock, a graphic designer.
So this being kind of our pilot episode of what we're trying to work on here, we're kind of going to cover the orientation issue, our first issue of the quarter, kind of some of our experiences going into it, and what Pierce College brings to the table as a whole for some of you listeners. For starters, I don't know how many people out there are familiar with what goes into our orientation issue, so I'm going to give a bit of a synopsis for it. Our orientation issues are pretty much giant advertisements. We kind of sit here and we let students know that are coming into Pierce College what they can expect when they, enter the college setting, what kind of opportunities they have, what kind of classes they can take, the various events that'll take place. It's kind of, a bit of a brochure to get you interested in coming to Pierce College, to get you excited about being here. And as exciting as that may sound in the way I just pitched it, it can get a little monotonous when we're doing it every year like we've been doing it. I mean, how many times can you have a story about a library without it being the same story about the library? So when the idea was first pushed on us, I felt a little stifled by it immediately, just the idea of, okay, I have to take a story that's been done tons of times, reboot it, try to make it seem interesting. I mean, that's what's killing the cinema industry, right? I mean, I didn't want to have any part in that, but it was out of our hands, and we took it upon ourselves to make it happen. And all in all, in summation, I think we did a pretty good job with what came together.
I definitely think that with this issue, we really pulled it together, even though it is kind of going through the same stuff over and over again. I like to think that this time around, we got stuff out in a unique way, especially when it comes to design.
Traditionally, with the orientation issue, there's a lot of really, I would say, like stock footage articles that are journalism. So kind of stock footage journalism in that it's, here's this building that we're writing about, and here's this program that you can have. But with this orientation issue, there were a couple of things that were different. One part that I really liked is some different pieces that we had. In our, it's page 3, we wrote a piece about community service in the Puyallup area and what students can do to kind of connect with what's going on in their community and how they can help out and volunteer. And then there was a couple of pieces for our Health Education Center page. One was a commentary on how students can lead a better life of just being healthy and to get into fitness. And then there was another piece about our outdoor recreation coordinator and what he's doing at Pierce to get students out into the outdoors and to build relationships together as they're doing different activities. So rather than just reading about every building over and over, the random text things you can have, there's a couple of pieces in there that I thought were kind of different for our orientation issue, which is good.
I definitely feel like even though it is kind of monotonous for us to do this issue over and over again, I do feel like it is useful for students. Like, I know my first year at Pierce, it was definitely helpful to have something I could grab that had all the information I needed in one place. A map, Wi-Fi, that sort of thing.
It's funny, we actually had a faculty member come to Teresa and tell her that the map on the back of the page, on the back of the newspaper, should be the new de facto map for Pierce College. She had a lot of positive things to say about the map. It's kind of interesting because out of everything we did for the orientation issue, the map is what keeps coming back to me. Like, really? I get word about the map, and they're like, the map came out so good.
That is so good to know as the person who designed the map. Yeah, because you're just looking at the map on the website. I was like, how do I make this pretty and interesting and still, understandable? And so that's what I try to do with it.
What do you think is probably something that you went into that you didn't think was going to be an issue that kind of turned into a bit of an obstacle?
The front cover, for sure. We had a really hard time coming up with what we wanted to do for the front cover, and so we put the design aspect of the paper we put together in 2.5 days.
Crazy.
And it was wild. And so we're trying to get all these pages out, but at the same time, we still don't have a cover, and I felt like me and our other designer, CEO, didn't really have the time to focus on brainstorming what we wanted to do for the cover because we had to get the other pages laid out. And so it came down to, I think, the day before we needed to send the paper off to print, and we still had like no ideas for the cover at all. And you would think that would be like a fairly straightforward thing, but we already had the map on the back, and just looking at past orientation issues, it was like, what can we do that's different and better and nice? And it just like, it was very last second we came up with an idea and we executed it, and luckily it turned out, in my opinion, very good. But yeah, I thought that was going to be the simplest part, and it totally wasn't.
Well, and we tried over and over with like 6 different ideas.
Yeah.
I think we went out and took photos and stole the OSL and took photos, and they didn't turn out, and it wasn't working. So the cover was something that we worked on for days and could not come up with something to do with it. It was awful.
Well, it was everything we tried just didn't turn out.
Mhm.
Originally, one of the ideas that we were going to take photos, like you said, take the OSL out and take photos. And then we found out that with the fold line of the paper, the top half of the photo would have just been like building and sky, which would just not have worked at all. And so we had to just completely start over.
That's a big thing a lot of people overlook when it comes to a paper. I didn't really consider it my first quarter working for the paper either, but there's a special art form to the fold of the newspaper itself, and like whatever goes on the front of the cover can come out looking like even better than it would have in and of itself, or it can come out hurting itself because of how it lands on the fold line.
Going back to the designed portion of it, I want to ask all 3 of you, because I know while you guys were working on this paper during the final processes of it, everyone else was either editing their stories or talking, playing board games, and you guys, I just remember I walked in here and you guys were just kind of arguing back and forth and staying out late, and staying here late working on this. So can you tell me what it was like with the energy and all that going on in the room?
It was hard for me because this aspect of the newspaper is probably my weakest, and it's not something like that I can say and just be like, it's just, it is what it is. I'm a writer. That is what I do. That is what I know. And because of that, editing is something that kind of comes easy to me. And because of my background in the military, leadership is something that comes easy to me. But I have such a small, minuscule iota concept of design that more often than not, I kind of have to leave everything up to Maddie. And I don't like doing that, because I think we, not as just a pair, but as a staff, work best when we're all pulling our necessary weight and functioning as a team. So it's hard to be here because I feel like I should be taking part, but I also kind of feel like I'm not taking part. So you just kind of wait until a little fire comes up that you can probably put out. And you're like, okay, I'll go do that.
Well, and at the same time, I feel like there's nothing you can really do to help us as you're not a design person. That's not really your job, or like something that you're very good at, like you said. And so other than just being around for me to ask you questions, or hey, Steven, we need to cut out a couple lines on this story, or whatever. Like, there's nothing really you can do except for be there for, like, moral support. And that's kind of what happened was there were a lot of times where, Co and I were working, and then Maddie was helping out with, like, photography that we needed and, like, managing that stuff. But then there was also a lot of moments where I felt like you guys were just kind of, like, hanging out with us while we worked to, like, make sure that we were doing okay. Because I know for me it was very much like there was one day where I like worked an 11-hour day trying to get this paper out, because it was, it was 2.5 days and there was not a lot of time, and so it was really stressful because it was like, we need to get this done. It was my first time really like working with the program we use to lay out the paper. I had done some practice with it before, but it was like the first time that there was a ton of stuff to do on it, and so it was like learning everything on a time crunch, and just it was very stressful, but it was also really fun, if that makes sense, to have everybody in the office and we're all working on something, and to watch it all come together I felt was awesome.
Yeah, I feel like during the design process, because I definitely have a design mind, but I haven't worked with a whole lot of design programs, and so I would have a lot of thoughts and throw them out to our designers and then not really know how to complete them, or complete them kind of halfway. So I think the thing that really helped was definitely having everybody be in the office, just around. There was one night where I was working until like 9 or 10 o'clock, and Steven and our office manager Paige just sat there watching YouTube videos, just to keep me from crying. But I think definitely one of the highlights of putting design together was definitely the amount of coffee and chocolate I got to consume during that process. Because without those sorts of things, it becomes very tiring really quickly. So, you gotta have whatever it takes to keep you going.
We had a jar of these little mini Hershey's chocolates in the office, and I kept going over to it I deserve this, and taking one, I've been working hard, I deserve a chocolate.
I haven't checked in. Does that jar still exist?
I think we emptied it. I think it's right over there and it's empty.
Yeah, needless to say, we ate an entire bag of Halloween candy within a week.
Among that similar line, we had an issue with printing, and so there was a day where I was also there very late, and our office manager, Paige, and Steven were just chilling in the office with me while I was doing work, and there was nothing they could really do to help, and it was kind of the same thing where they were just keeping me sane.
Sometimes that's all you can bring to the table, Sometimes just because you can't do something doesn't mean you should just leave. Because, if this is going to work properly, we kind of need to look out for each other, too. And just because someone says they got it doesn't mean they're feeling like they got it. So you got to,
So going through all those problems that you guys did for this issue, what do you guys think that helped you? That was a problem for this issue, but you think it's going to benefit you for the next one?
First thing that comes to mind is taking the time to plan out the layout, because it just didn't function as a concept to me to worry about until 3 days before we had to send it to the printer. And so we sat down, myself, Maddie, Ash, andCio, and we sat over there in the table and we started drawing this up, and it took the whole day. And I thought to myself, we wasted a whole day on this. If this is going to take this long every time, we should start working on it earlier. So since then, for issue 1, I threw together a quick chicken scratch layout. I passed it Maddie's way so she can revise it, and then we'll pass it on to them. And that'll be the format from here on out. That way, by the time the issues are coming around, we're not sitting here oh wait, how are we going to lay this out? Because that was terrifying.
There was also just general formatting stuff that I learned. It has to be a certain way, it has to be under a certain file size, and that's not going to be a problem in the future anymore now that I know that. But going into this, we were kind of thrown into the orientation issue, and so it didn't know things like that. And so now I feel like that will not come up again, hopefully.
I think honestly though, some of the things that perhaps were issues with creating orientation issue, I think actually will benefit us in the future. And I think one of those things is the nights where we were all there late trying to work on things and everybody's going crazy. But really just kind of the beauty of the team and having that collaboration where we all support each other regardless of what's going on. And sometimes people have different roles and they need to, everybody lets everybody work in their own role. And so I think that going through stress together really teaches you a lot about people and who's going to be there when you need them.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely beauty in the madness of it all.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about design. I wanted to ask you guys, because I don't do any writing, what is the writing process like for something like this?
This specifically, the orientation issue?
Yes.
It's it's very similar to the question you asked yourself earlier when you were talking about design, because we're covering territory that everyone has covered. We're not walking on the moon, we're walking through a Walmart. Everybody's been here. So it's kind of looking at this and asking yourself, how can I tell this story again in a way that still kind of keeps it fresh? And I think Maddie kind of alluded to it earlier, and I think a lot of it is in kind of involving the people. I got to do a quick little thing on Suleiman because he's the new outdoors and recreation activities director. And that story in and of itself probably wouldn't be too interesting or different from any other deviations to that in the previous issues. But since it's a new position held by him, he had different ideas to bring to the table. It kind of made it feel a little different, like Coke to vanilla Coke. Kind of the same, little splash of something else.
And I think part of it is also when you're writing about stuff that has been covered, dozens of times before, it's also choosing to look at it in a different way, to kind of see the nuances in it and see the little details that you maybe would not have thought about before, because there were definitely times where we needed more content to fill the pages, and so I would write different pieces and stories, and how can we make this anything different than what we've read for years and years and years. So part of it was really just throwing yourself into it and seeing what else you could pull out of the story. But then another part to remember too is that the majority of our students who read orientation issue haven't read the previous ones, because orientation issue is specifically built for new students. So a lot of times we would worry about, students aren't going to care about this, they've already heard this, but with so many new students that come into Pierce all the time, it was something where I've actually talked to a few people who were like, this information was really helpful, because the majority of orientation issue information you can find on the website or take a walk around Pierce, but to have it, like Ash said, all there in one place, and in a really attractive, convenient format is really nice for new students.
Okay, so veering off from the newspaper a bit, as a new chief and editor, what would you tell our readers or viewers where you want to bring the Puyallup Post, whether it be through the physical newspaper, online, video, podcast? Like, what kind of direction do you want to take this?
When I first sat down with Daniel, the previous editor-in-chief, he told me, he said, start working on your packages and start planning your vision. And I thought to myself, vision, like, how much of a vision can I have for a paper? The direction should be clear and concise. We're trying to present information to people. But then I thought on that for a moment and thought about how skewed information is nowadays. People don't trust us anymore as a medium. People don't trust newspapers. Nowadays, we have to work so hard to be able to prove that what we're saying is correct, that we're not just talking out of, anywhere else but the facts. So, to me, I wanted to find a way to sort of prove to the community that we're involved, that we're a part of it, that we're on the ground floor with them, that we're not just looking out from the distance going, oh, that happened. So, I worked out a little format, a little pyramid of safety, community, and information. So, starting with information, we, as the staff of the newspaper, it's our responsibility to put out the information to the people. From there, that should help strengthen the communal ties, and the community being closer should theoretically be safer. I want people in Puyallup to be able to look to us and understand that we're there, we have the information, we're at all the events, we know what's going on with the police department. That's why we have that partnership with them that's so huge right now. I want them to be able to look at us as a source of information, but a source for community too. And I want them to understand that Puyallup is a place that they should feel safe in, but hopefully we'll entertain them along the way too. That was pretty much my goal.
Well, and I also know that you had a big thing where you wanted to be more than just a student newspaper. You also wanted to be something for the Puyallup community and not just the Pierce College community.
Yeah, I can't stand when we talk about student newspapers. I think attaching that diminishes the value of the hard work everyone here puts in. Oh, we're just students. We're just being anything is a limiter. When anybody says, I'm just this, what you're doing is limiting yourself from an action that you could be taking. So I don't believe we're ever just anything. We're the only, what we are just? We're just about the only newspaper that covers the information in the city of Puyallup. That is us. I mean, we do have the Tribune, right? The News Tribune? Yeah, but they're Tacomas. They're a branch from Tacoma, correct? Yeah, so we're the only ones out here doing that. Should we get kind of put on the spotlight because we're college students and we're doing that? I think we should just focus on the fact that we're doing that. That doesn't make us students who run a newspaper. That makes us journalists.
True.
So practically, that comes into ways that we've been formatting our newspaper through print and then in a couple of other ways online. So if you open up our newspaper and now for the rest of the issues for the year for print, all of our stories fall into 4 basic categories, and that's campus life, lifestyle, health and safety, and entertainment. And pretty much all the stories that you can find about news in the Puyallup area or just information that's happening on campus or different reviews and stuff that we have all fall into that area, really to bring the news in a concise way, but also news that's relevant to students and the community. And then for the online side, we've really gotten into the fact that so many students and so many news readers are getting their information online. I mean, how many of us actually get a newspaper at our front door? So we've been working to create our website in a way that students and people from the community can come in and have news that's happening, find news that's happening daily, that they can see articles that are coming up every day. And with our social media, we've been posting pretty much daily as well. So it's a great place to be able to get the news that's happening both on our campus and then just out in the area.
And where should people find our social media?
All of our social media are at the Puyallup Post. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we're working on a Snapchat.
Yeah, coming soon to a theater near you. All kinds of crazy hijinks when we're not busy stressing out.
Well, and I think circling back to a way to make everything, like, Maddie, you mentioned, like, how many people get a newspaper to their door, and I think that's something that design-wise I have to think about too, is yes, we want to be professional and more than a student newspaper, but at the same time, you know, how do I make a newspaper look appealing to people on a college campus? And so that's something that I have to think about, and CEO has to think about as well, making it interesting.
That's a really hard challenge we kind of had to drop on you guys. I mean, it's a double-edged sword because it's both beneficial and opportunistic to have you guys around, but it's kind of a very tight microscope lens you're put under for this, because we've had designers in the past work for the newspaper, but they've either been limited in what they know or they just haven't had the time to put their full commitment into the paper, which is fair. You know, everybody has their lives. But this is a really interesting opportunity where we have two really talented designers that we can be like, oh, we should start doing this and we should start doing that. And we're kind of taking every inch you guys allot us to take that and run with it. So, you know, we're having posters being made to advertise all the different things we're doing, like this podcast, for instance. We're having a lot more graphic designs in our papers to catch people's attention and draw their eyes. Our videos have more interesting graphics in their intros or just as stills. I mean, it's difficult because, like you said, like, information is paramount. That's what we're trying to do. But you have to entertain people in this. You have to catch their eye because, especially a college student, we're all heading to our classes. We have things to do. And if I'm going to pick up the newspaper, it needs to be appealing. And that's even before working for the paper. I didn't know the newspaper existed on this campus before I worked for it. And that's kind of sad to admit, but I think it has a lot to do with the marketing of it, how we push our visuals, how we get people interested. And I'm not saying that wasn't happening. Maybe I'm just a harder sell, but if I have it my way, people are going to at least know that we're doing what we're doing.
Well, and last year the design was very professional and straightforward, and if you looked at it, it looked like it was New York Times or News Tribune. And this time around, I think with the direction that CEO and I are heading, with the support from you guys, it's going somewhere a little bit different from last year. And it's a unique position to be in where I'm basically the design team. We are redesigning pretty much everything for the Puyallup Post. Besides our main flag logo, we have, you know, so many things that we're redesigning and making new this year.
I think related to that, one of the big things that we have to change our design, to change the way that we're to change the way that we're presenting news is really to continue to create a student community. Because I think in the past, often when you pick up a newspaper, you don't ever see the people behind it. It's just kind of the information's there. You don't know exactly who writes it, who are the names of the stories that are written. But really, the Post is something that's become a student community. For us, we've grown so much and be able to work together. But we've worked really hard to be able to be present on what's happening on campus, with events. You know, you'll see some of us walking around with every event with our little maroon name tags, or with a camera. It's really important to us to be able to foster student growth and to be able to, for students to pick up the newspaper and do more than just read words, to connect with the campus and to connect with peers. So it's important for us to be out there at events, and then also important for us to connect with students, you know, where we are just day to day. I know our office is in a little dark hallway in the CTR building, but we always love it when people come and say hello.
So Vic, with everything we were putting together for the orientation issue, tell us and, you know, the listeners a bit about what you were doing as the videographer.
As a videographer, I was doing ride-alongs and then also recording some interviews, which are pretty fun. I think the technical aspect of the paper is really cool. Something that as always occurs to me, it's kind of a thing that every single type of filmmaker or videographer, anyone who's on the technical side of things, always goes through is like people always tell you like if there's going to be a problem, like you don't really think of everything that's going to happen, and until you get on set or to that interview and you turn on the camera, like everything that can go wrong will go wrong. So for instance, we were doing I was with Don and we were recording some of the police at the Puyallup.
The state fair.
Yeah. And I didn't know this was a problem, and then I looked it up, and I guess it happens every now and then. So we were recording them, and to save battery at the end of every interview when the cops would leave and then come back, I turn off the camera to save the battery a bit. And once I turned it back on, when you turn the camera off, the shutter closes, so there's like no dust goes in there. And what happened was the shutter stayed closed when I turned it back on, so it was just giving me an error. I'm like, is it just not reading my lens? So I took off my lens and everything, and then Don was like, oh, like, are you ready? And I'm just like, just go without me, because like it was like 2 minutes for me to like understand what was happening. So until I figured it out, I was like, okay. She was already like 2 questions in, but I was like, well, it's fine. We still have the audio for that portion, so it was okay. But yeah, that was like a thing where it's just all like, everything was going so fine, and then like one little thing, and I'm just like, oh my god, like I'm just not recording anything right now. It's just not working. So I had to like kind of improvise.
What was it like riding in the back of a cop car?
The seat was way different than I thought it would be. You'd think that it's just like a normal like back of the car kind of seat, but it's like when you get on a roller coaster, the seats are super hard and like uncomfortable. It was like that. It's like kind of like when you first get on like a roller coaster and you sit down, it's like super metally and hard. And yeah, they have like a little window there, so it was pretty fun.
Did you try and escape?
No, but I did send pictures to my parents, like me in the cop car, and just saying like I got arrested. And my mom didn't even care. She's all like, well, you know better than that. Like, okay. And then my sister was like, I sent it to my sister, and she's like, what are you going to do now? I'm in the back of a cop car. What am I supposed to do?
It concerned me that your family was so nonchalant about you being arrested.
My sister was all like, if it's anything over 300, you're going to stay there for the night. At least my sister was willing to bail me out. Under 300.
So I know you probably covered it in the video, but do you want to talk about maybe like behind the scenes of the video? Like what was it like talking to the cops in the back of a police car in the ride along?
It was pretty fun. No, I kind of, whenever I do those kind of things, I kind of introduce myself first, because I'd rather have them know me, like my name and all that, rather than just like have them just think of me as the guy with the camera like pointing at their face, So the ride along was really fun. I got to have more interaction with the police when I went with Don to the police station, and we interviewed like 4 officers. That was really fun, because at the end of it, like they kind of hung out, because we were waiting for other officers to come in to interview them. So they kind of hung out in there, and we just kind of talked, and it was just really nice, because like we got the footage of them talking, and then like after we got done recording, they kind of like elaborated more on what they were talking about like how their family life is, like what they do on the weekends and whatnot. It's just something, when you see a cop drive by and you're driving, you kind of like freak out a bit, because you're like, am I doing everything right? And you kind of forget, like, like they're like an everyday person. They have a family, they have hobbies. So it's really nice to kind of like, as like whenever I see a cop now, I'm like, oh, maybe I've met him already, So I think that's a really cool thing.
Some of the things you guys can look forward to, we've got this big package. You've already kind of gotten a bit about it. We're doing this big partnership with the Puyallup PD, and we've got a lot of fun stories and videos planned with them. It ought to help you view the officers in the area in a different light, hopefully. And for our Pierce College students that just attend the campus regularly, we're doing a big piece with Dr. Daryl Kane. He's the new campus president, and he just recently took the seat, and we're going to sort of highlight what brought him to this point, a bit of his story and kind of the things he has in mind, and how he fits into the puzzle piece, which puzzle piece he kind of is for the entire picture that is Pierce College. It should be pretty interesting, like Vic just mentioned, we did a ride-along. We're going to have some more ride-alongs down the line. We're going to do a fun public safety test with some members of the Criminal Justice Department here at Pierce College to see if they're tough enough to be that police officer they want to be just yet. And, we're putting out new content every day. We've got the other podcast we do, Post Popcorn Picks, where we review movies. That's always a good time. We're going to be trying to deliver as much variety as we can when it comes to these videos, and hopefully if anybody's listening to this and they're at Pierce College, stop by, tell us what you think, give us some thoughts. I want us to be open to the community. That's the whole point of this. So if you have opinions on it and there are things you think we should be doing or we shouldn't be doing, feel free to stop by and tell us what you think. All you got to do is take a paper as you go. Well, thanks everybody for listening. This has been the Post Point. We're going to be doing videos like this every Tuesday of every week, so be sure to tune in next time. Thanks everybody.